Hello, friends. Just a reminder, if you do not need me to read the presentation out loud for you, you can access the PowerPoint presentation on your own. It's in the virtual classroom on the last slide underneath the materials. Okay, so this is just if you need someone to read it out loud to you to help you process it better. For today's bell ringer, I would like to know, or you can just think to yourself, what is the first step you take when creating a new artwork? Where do you begin? Watercolor Lesson 3. Knowing where to begin. Watercolor painters are always thinking about how what they are doing now will affect their options later. Choices you make in the early stages of a painting can close doors permanently, so it is essential to consider the first step in terms of the freedom it will allow. Remember to be thinking a couple layers ahead of yourself when you ask, where do I begin? You're going to want to start light. Dark color lights more easily than the reverse. Broad washes usually precede small, dark strokes, and you want to avoid laying a fluid wash over a strong dark to prevent the dark from running. Making a preliminary value study is always a good way to learn what you need to know about the darks, such as how dark they need to be, or how many of them really belong in the picture. In a study, it seems fine to put the darks in whenever, since the only goal is to learn what needs to be true. If they run a bit when I apply a wash over them, it doesn't matter, since this is not the painting, it's a study. When I am ready to begin a proper painting, I know the role of the darks well enough to suspend them in my mind until the picture is ready to receive them gracefully. Okay, so when we're talking about a study, we're talking about something you do before your actual painting. It's something that helps you try out different things so that you know what you want to do when you make your final product. So you're going to proceed from general to specific. Proceeding from general to specific is another progression that plays an essential part in determining how I begin a painting as well as when I stop. This might even be more important than proceeding from light to dark. Generally speaking, a brick wall is a red rectangle. Specifically, it is made of a great many individual red rectangles. How much of the specific information you choose to include in your painting is a matter of personal style and the role the wall plays in the big picture. A big red rectangle may turn out to be all the information you need. Or you may want to suggest the texture of the individual bricks without actually delineating any of them. One artist might choose to include just a few scattered bricks, when another might not stop until every brick is visible. No matter how fully you want to describe the wall, it makes sense to begin by thinking in the most general terms. First, establish the simplest form of the subject, and then you're free to add information incrementally, stopping before you overload the picture. So you're going to start with that big brick wall, the big red rectangle, and then you can kind of slowly add in little bits of information, little bits of bricks here and there, a line here and there, and keep adding until you're satisfied, because you don't want to overdo it. In the following slides, the artists have represented brick walls with varying degrees of specificity. In each of these city scenes, the brick buildings begin as simple washes, affording the artist the opportunity to add as little or as much texture as they wanted. The red building in the background on the right is treated so simply that it looks like a single giant brick with windows. It is not meant to stand out in the big picture, and indicating individual bricks would have been distracting. The buildings in this scene are all far enough back in the pictorial space that we do not expect to see much detail. With no reason to call attention to any particular building, the artist stops well short of describing information as specific as individual bricks. Notice, though, that the granulation of his washes and the tall building toward the left suggests texture well enough for us to provide the bricks. So you can't actually see them, they're not painted, but you see enough of the texture to figure out in your brain, hey, there's bricks there. Harold Gretzner also chose not to make individual bricks. Instead, he dragged a damp brush across the ridges of the dry, rough paper to imply a texture, inviting the viewer to meet him halfway. This second layer represents a further step toward complexity than Kosa took with his granulating washes. In this one, it goes a step further. His second layer of tiny rectangles leaves no room for misinterpretation. A brick is a brick, and it only takes a dozen of them to suggest that these are what make up the entire wall. George Post enjoyed using patterns to refer to texture. He shows the specific bricks only on the shady side of his blue-eyed building, but their presence does as much as the shadow to show that there's a change of planes. After a lengthy search for a richly detailed treatment of a brick wall, I was delighted to find one that provides lots of specific information without overdoing it. And this one, he's very conscious of how much detail a given surface can carry. The sunlit wall of the smaller brick building, with its single window, has plenty of room for individual bricks. The sunlit wall of the big building, however, is already chock full of windows and shadows, so he didn't want to overload it with the brick pattern as well. Having different purposes and different styles, they all stopped at different points. But no one put nearly as many bricks as they could actually see in real life. Why not? I'll give you a moment to think about that. So for your assignment, I want you to practice painting a brick wall. So you're going to experiment with the amount of detail you'll use. You're going to start simple, right? Just that one clean wash of the red or brown, and then you're going to add the detail a little at a time until you're satisfied. Remember, you're trying not to overdo it. You just want to put just enough detail to get the message across.